Have you ever stopped to think about what happens to a referee after the game ends? When the stadium empties out and the cameras switch off, all that's left is silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. But it doesn't always last long. Sometimes, it's broken by threats, abuse, and hate-filled messages. Referees aren't just judges of the game, they're targets. Targets of furious fans, outraged players, and unbearable pressure. The price of a single wrong decision can be the end of a career, and in some tragic cases, the end of a life. Today, you're going to dive into the harsh psychological reality faced by referees, the weight of carrying an entire game on your shoulders, the constant fear of making a mistake, the digital lynching that destroys reputations, and the emotional exhaustion that pushes many to the edge. And in the end, we are left with a question few dare to ask. When the weight becomes too much, how far can a referee really go before breaking? A dodgy penalty, a missed offside, a controversial red card, one mistake. That's all it takes. If a striker misses a goal, they'll get another chance. If a coach makes a poor sub, there's always the next game. But for a referee, one mistake can permanently destroy their credibility. Football doesn't forgive. And fans don't forget. There are cases of referees being demoted over a single poor decision in a key match. Others never got to officiate a top-tier game again. And this isn't just in professional football. The psychological pressure exists in grassroots, junior, even suburban league matches. So the big question is, how does someone carry that emotional load, day after day? Now picture this. You're on the pitch, surrounded by shouting players, furious fans, and coaches staring daggers at you. You've got fractions of a second to make a call that could change the outcome of the match. The fear of getting it wrong can be paralyzing. It makes referees second-guess themselves. Some step onto the pitch with their hearts racing, palms sweating. The anxiety before a game can be so intense that many suffer sleepless nights. The result? Unconfident, hesitant refs. And ironically, that fear of making a mistake only increases the chances of making one. It's a vicious, destructive cycle. Many referees say they feel a wave of dread before every game. They know that no matter what decision they make, someone will be unhappy. That psychological burden follows them not just on the pitch, but into their personal lives too. And when the mistake happens, the consequences don't stop at full time. Media scrutiny, abuse on social media, and criticism from their own federation can cause referees to carry guilt for ages. Some develop such intense fear that they begin avoiding tough calls altogether, hoping the VAR or assistant referees will take the responsibility instead. In the end, refereeing becomes a burden, and the love for the game turns into a living nightmare. When a referee makes a fair decision that harms one team, they immediately become the enemy. Impartiality in football often isn't respected, it's hated. If a ref awards a penalty against the home team, they're a cheat. If they send off a fan-favorite player, they're corrupt. If they strictly follow the rulebook, they're labeled a heartless robot. No matter what they do, they'll always be hated by someone. And worse, many fans can't separate the professional referee from the person behind the whistle. That's when the abuse gets personal. Some refs have reported being shouted at in the supermarket, having their kids bullied at school, and even receiving death threats from anonymous messages. The very impartiality that should be the cornerstone of sport becomes a reason for rage and resentment. And it's not just the fans. Clubs, executives, and even commentators often feed this toxic culture by painting referees as the villains behind a team's defeat. Football's turned into a battlefield, and referees are always caught in the crossfire. The sad irony? Referees aren't allowed to support a team. They can't celebrate a brilliant goal. They can't show emotion. They must be neutral. But the football world refuses to accept that neutrality. Before the internet, referees were only criticized at the stadium or in sports talk shows. Now, the hate spills over into their personal lives. One controversial call, and suddenly your name's trending on Twitter. Fake accounts pop up to spread lies. Hate floods your Instagram inbox. And often, those threats become real. There have been cases where referees had their home addresses leaked online, putting their own safety, and their families, at risk. This leads to anxiety, sleepless nights, and in many cases, full-blown panic attacks. And it doesn't stop there. Online abuse doesn't go away. A mistake from years ago can come back to haunt a referee any time they step onto the pitch for another big game. Labels like incompetent or corrupt stick around forever. For many referees, social media becomes a war zone. They end up deleting comments, blocking users, restricting access to their profiles. Some even quit social media altogether just to protect their mental health. But here's the bigger issue. What if referees start making poor decisions not because they're incompetent, but because they're scared? Many step onto the field already terrified of what might happen afterward. They try to be perfect to avoid more hate. But in football, perfection doesn't exist. And the more they try to please everyone, the more they become a target. Would you ever be able to handle that kind of pressure? We often idolize players, worship coaches, and follow clubs like religion. But we forget about the person in the middle of the pitch, wearing black, carrying the whistle, the one who's expected to be flawless in an impossible job. So, next time you see a ref blow the whistle, try to see more than just the uniform. See the human being. The one who gives everything to a game that rarely gives anything back. Being a referee isn't just about blowing a whistle. It's about studying rulebooks, staying physically fit, and dealing with constant psychological pressure. And all of that comes at a cost: mental exhaustion. Burnout syndrome has become increasingly common among referees. Many simply can't bear the emotional weight anymore, and walk away from the career altogether. The exhaustion doesn't just come from the games themselves, but from everything that surrounds them. The relentless demands from federations, the exhausting training routines, the lack of recognition, and the ever-present fear of making a mistake turn refereeing into an unsustainable burden. Many referees suffer from chronic anxiety, insomnia, and even panic attacks before high-stakes matches. Football, which once ignited passion, becomes a toxic and unbearable environment. And the worst part? There's no structured psychological support for these professionals. Most referees are left to deal with this pressure on their own, with nowhere to turn. For many, the only way out is to hang up the whistle and try to rebuild their lives away from the sport they once loved. The hatred towards referees has gone far beyond acceptable limits. In smaller leagues, it's become common for refs to be assaulted by players and fans. There have been shocking cases of referees being beaten, hospitalized, even killed. The scariest part? Many of these attacks happen in front of hundreds of people, and no one steps in. Videos are circulating online showing referees being chased around the pitch, surrounded by furious players, with fans storming the field just to attack them. What should be a sport turns into a war zone. In amateur and youth leagues, where security is almost non-existent, the violence is even more brutal. Referees are assaulted simply because a team didn't agree with a decision. Many walk away from the profession, traumatized by the fear of ever returning to a football field. And don't think this only happens in local games. Even in major international competitions, referees have been threatened and harassed, needing police escorts just to leave the stadium safely. The message is clear. In football, the ones making the calls are always in danger. But the real question is, how long will this be normalized? How long will referees have to risk their physical safety just for doing their job? This is the darkest point of all. Some referees simply can't go on. The weight of the pressure, the constant hatred, the isolation, it leads to the worst possible outcome. Cases of referees taking their own lives aren't widely publicized, but they do happen. And they prove that football urgently needs to talk about mental health in refereeing. One of the most striking cases was that of German referee Babak Rafati, who attempted suicide in 2011, just hours before officiating a Bundesliga match. He was found in his hotel room after years of battling depression and unbearable pressure. Thankfully, He survived and now speaks openly about the importance of mental health for referees. Another tragic story is that of Scottish referee John C. McCabe, who took his own life in 2021 after enduring intense pressure and online attacks following controversial decisions on the pitch. He became a target of hate on social media, and the emotional toll was overwhelming. These are just a few examples. How many others are suffering in silence? How many more will have to reach breaking point before football starts caring about the mental well-being of its referees? The reality is brutal. Behind the whistle, lives are being destroyed. And too often, the end is irreversible. The truth is, no one steps onto the pitch to be hated. But that's the reality referees face every single day. It's time for the football world to understand that referees are human beings. Yes, they make mistakes, but they also suffer. Behind the uniform is someone who feels, who fears, who fights to keep going. If this video spoke to you, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. And there's another powerful video right here on your screen that you'll definitely want to watch. Click on it now, and I'll see you there.